Hail to legal warriors. Did you ever wonder what you should do if someone uses your name and gets you charged with a crime even though you had nothing to do with it? Yes, that actually happens. It happens way more than you think. And I've had to deal with a lot of those cases over the last 2 or 3 years. So if you're interested in this area of the law, stay tuned. This is the video for you. My name is Attorney Lance Fryrear. I'm a defense attorney in Linwood, Washington. My law firm's been defending people charged with crimes all throughout Washington State for more than 20 years, and I'm putting out these videos to help educate the public. So if you find this useful, please like and please subscribe. More people get to see it. More people get the help they need. Now I'm just going to jump right into it. This actually does happen, where someone gives us a call and they say, "Hey, Lance, I have a warrant for my arrest out of a court I've never even been to. I've never even been to that city, and I'm wanted for some type of crime. I learned about it from, talking to somebody on a job application. Hey, we can't hire you because your background check says there's a warrant for your arrest for theft, or there's a warrant for your arrest for assault." I've even had cases where people have done a background check and there's convictions on their record that they know nothing about, and they were never even in court. What a nightmare. And you would think like the system would want to fix that, that the prosecutor would just, volunteer to go undo their own conviction, but of course they don't. And so what do we do about this situation? What's the most common, who's the most common culprit in this situation? Where does the system fall down in not doing enough to make sure the right person is charged? And once we get rid of the case and we get it fixed, what do you do to protect yourself in the future? So let's start with the situation where you learn there's a warrant for your arrest, or you learn there's a charge that you know nothing about. Who's the most likely culprit in that situation? It's typically going to be someone who knows not only your name, but also your date of birth, probably your driver's license number, or potentially your social security number. Why does this even happen? How is it possible that, that your name could be used in court, and someone could show up in court under your name even, and no one ever knows it wasn't you? Well, it can happen because in most non-felony crimes, police officers are not going to make a custodial arrest where they take you to the jail. They're not going to take you to the jail. They're not going to fingerprint you. They're not going to photograph you. And the smaller the jurisdiction, in my opinion, the more likely that's going to happen. And also the less serious crime, the more likely that's going to happen, like in a theft case. An officer gets a call that someone's in custody at Walmart, and that person doesn't have ID. So what happens? They ask that person for that person's name, and they give your name. And who is that? It's probably a sibling. It's probably someone related to you, someone who knows that. Oftentimes you've got that no good brother, that no good sister, could be a roommate, but it's typically not a stranger. It could also just be a friend who really probably shouldn't be a friend. But the officer shows up and you don't have an ID, so what's the officer to do? Well, the officer typically starts asking questions. What's your date of birth? What's your driver's license number? Things like that. And if there's been prior police contacts, they're going to be able to check and verify some of those things. At the very least, they can check the Department of Licensing records. And an officer's busy. They've got things to do. They have no reason to believe necessarily that people are using fake names. And they take the report, they send their citation in, and now all of a sudden that charge is under your name. So how do we fix that? How do we fix a case where someone has used your name and they weren't booked into the jail? Well, the ways we fix things in the past is sometimes an officer makes the person they're citing sign the citation, right? Does the citation signature look like the signature on your driver's license? Maybe it's totally different. Sometimes we can find some errors where the officer wasn't that careful, and maybe there's some digits off on the information that the suspect actually gave the officer that doesn't match with your information. And in the theft case, I remember a case we had where we actually were able to convince the store security to pull the video footage. And we luckily got some nice store security people, because even if we issue a subpoena, they can just say it doesn't exist. It's not like I can go check their security. But we were able to get store security to pull the video. And then we compared the video to what our client actually looked like. and got the prosecutor to pay attention to it. And then the prosecutor was able to dismiss the case. So that's how we can fix a situation where the suspect was not booked into custody. Remember, if we're actually getting a prosecutor to do that, and this is someone that you know and care about that use your name, hopefully you're mad enough that you want mad enough that you will cooperate in making sure they get held accountable, because most prosecutors will condition any type of dismissal with you actually saying who it is that did it. They might make you sign a statement, say, yes, this is my brother, because they need to protect themselves, because of course they're dismissing an action if we can show them to their belief that it wasn't you. Now, what if the prosecutor doesn't agree with that? Well, we can, I used to do these as a prosecutor, there could be an identity hearing where we could demand a hearing with the court for identity. You don't see these very much anymore, but it can still be done where we can, deal with the warrant or deal with the court case and say, Judge, it wasn't my client. We want an identity hearing, a special motion hearing where we bring in witnesses to say, hey, officer, is this the person? Is this the person you dealt with? Now, that's dangerous to do, because what if the officer just says, yeah, that's them, right? What if you look like the person or the officer isn't thinking that much or the officer doesn't remember? We can really get you in a worse position if we go there first. So that's not typically the first thing we want to do. That might be the last thing we want to do, because we can't guarantee what the witnesses will say. And if they start to ID you wrongfully, well, now we've got some even bigger problems than we did before. So what's another situation that we can deal with? Well, I mentioned there's one where someone gets booked into custody. Now, those are hopefully going to be a little bit easier to solve. If you've been booked into custody, then there's going to hopefully be a booking photo, and certainly there's going to be fingerprints. There's always going to be fingerprints taken when you're booked into custody. And this is going to take longer to figure out, and it may take you spending some money, because typically the government's not going to pay to have your fingerprints processed versus the fingerprints they have, because they think it's you, right? Because that's the name they have. But we could do that ourselves. Have your fingerprints taken, get the arrest records and the fingerprints there, and have it processed by a professional. Now, some prosecutors might do that. Depends on the level of the charge. In my 24 years of being a defense attorney, I have paid for a fingerprint analysis myself once because it was necessary to help the client. And we always have to do what's necessary to help the client. But if the suspect's been booked into custody, almost certainly that's going to be one that we can fix, unless you've got a twin or something like that. I don't even know how twins deal with this at all. But I'm sure if there's a twin out there, you can comment below and let me know what's happened to you. And if this has happened to any of you, please put some comments down so we can all learn from what happened and how you got it fixed, because my ways aren't necessarily the only ways to get it fixed. Now, assuming this is a situation we're in where it's pre-trial, that's one thing. What if it's post-trial and you already have a conviction? I've seen that case as well, and that is a really big problem. There it's going to be important to find an attorney that has some type of positive relationship with the prosecutor's office so we can get someone to pay attention, because yes, there can be appeals and these writs and things filed, but that is big, big money, right? And we don't want to be spending big, big money to fix something that you didn't do. We'd rather spend as little as possible to fix it. So it'd be good to try to find an attorney that has some type of decent relationship with the prosecutors, where we can appeal to a prosecutor's better side and say, hey, I think you've been hoodwinked because it's not my client who did this. Then we might have to go through and get some recordings or stuff like that, because believe it or not, in Washington State, if it's not a felony conviction, ID is never looked at once in the criminal system. There's no identification in court. You don't have to show a driver's license. You don't get fingerprinted, nothing. Anybody could walk in and claim to be you and no one will ever check it. In felony land, if you're convicted, they'll take fingerprints after the fact, but not in misdemeanors. So this does happen. It's tough to believe that our system still lets anyone walk into court and claim they're someone and not show identification. Seriously, that's how it works in Washington State. In that case, though, what we're going to do is we're going to talk to the prosecutor and use our intelligence and whatever happened in the case to try to show it wasn't you. And now the good news is, post-COVID, I can imagine we might be able to find a Zoom recording, right, where we can see who was there. In the past, we didn't have that before Zoom. There's no video in the court. All we could listen to was maybe a tape recording. So if that happens, I want you to think about going the easier route than the harder route. If no one will help, we're going to have to go the harder route, and we're going to start having to file writs and all types of things, and it's not anything that I would want to be involved in. Now, finally, what I want to talk about is once we get it fixed, what do we do? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? Because if someone did this once, they're probably going to do it again. What I want you to do there typically is get a hold of the Department of Licensing and have them put a warning on your license that you've been a victim of an identification theft in the past, and they will do that. Now, the sad news is it doesn't always work. I've seen people who have been habitually harmed by their siblings, right? A brother who's gotten 3 or 4 times have gotten away with using someone else's name. Sometimes the police just don't look, right? We can't guarantee people do their jobs. But I think that's one thing that I know of that you can do. There's probably some others, but that's what I've seen in my practice. So again, if you have some other suggestions, please comment below. So that's what I wanted to talk about. I hope you found it useful. If so, please like and please subscribe. More people get to see it. And I hope you never have to go through this. But if you do, and it's in Washington State, feel free to reach out to my office. If we get on board, we will identify a way forward, and we will listen to what happened, and we will be there for you. Thank you.